Welcome to The Climb, where I help Christian men live fully, lead boldly, and leave a legacy that matters. I'm your host, Teko Bailey, husband, father, life coach, and your guide in the climb. Whether you're navigating fatherhood, building a business, or simply longing to live more purpose, this is the space to rise.
Mitch, thank you so much for joining us here on The Climb. It's an honor to have you. Welcome.
I am honored and excited to be here. This is great.
You've done some amazing work around the world. I love your Dream, Think, Do podcast. It's just
Yeah.
amazing. I love how you
Thank you.
help people to tap into their purpose and do the things that God has called them to do. I don't know if I'll do a great job introducing you, so why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience?
Absolutely. So I am a dad and a husband, first and foremost, based in Iowa. I am an entrepreneur. I have a training organization. So we do speaking, coaching, and online training. And I have a couple of podcasts because I am passionate about a few different subjects and I have a short
Yes.
attention spans.
Yes.
I love this medium and it's a great way to be able to reach the world. So I
Come
love what
on.
you're doing and I think this is great.
Awesome. You've worked with some very key people in the industry,
Yeah.
especially with people who are high achievers. How did all of this start? And even just before we get into that, take me a little bit through your journey, your personal and professional journey, and maybe
Yeah.
a season in life where you faced some significant adversity and how you navigated through that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it all relates. It's all connected. So yeah, I grew up in a small town in Iowa, and I was kind of an extreme kid. I worried a lot, but I was also curious about a lot, and
Yes.
fell in love with the idea of bicycles and biking. And so I started working at a little hole in the wall bike shop
Come on.
in my hometown of Newton, Iowa. And at 13, I think we violated some state laws with that, but I loved it and loved everything about it, and
Yeah.
really got bit by the entrepreneurial bug. I initially got into that passion because of a true fascination and love for biking, and much like many of the dreams that I've gotten to learn about through Dream Think Do, oftentimes one dream leads to another dream and leads to another dream. And that's definitely the case with my experience with the bike shop, that I went in falling in love with bikes and I came out having fallen in love with entrepreneurship.
Wow.
So I knew that someday I wanted to have my own business, but I wasn't sure what that would look like. So I decided to go into the corporate world after college and learn from some other people and get paid by some other people before I
Yeah.
decided to launch my own business. And right out of school, had a successful run, couple of years in business to business sales. And then I got into pharmaceutical sales, and it was really at a high time within that industry. I wound up getting in with a really great company. It was a great fit for me because it was a high science sale. It was
Yeah.
relational. It was really challenging. I really enjoyed it, but I really started to go through the ranks. I got promoted a number of times. Really did well. Won the awards, won the trips, all of
Come on.
that. But then I wound up getting promoted into a bad fit job.
Ooh.
And that was really pivotal for me because I knew it almost instantly. Like within
Yeah.
a couple of days, it was no,
Yeah.
what have I done? And my whole life, like we had kind of gone all in on this job. This job involved a move, all of that. And we were solidly living the sitcom life, meaning single income, two children, oppressive mortgage. And we just decided,
Love
let's
it.
go for our dream house. This is my dream job, all this kind of stuff. And just almost instantly, I knew I was in a bad fit job and we were in this sitcom situation, which I can laugh about now,
Come
but
on.
it was rough. It was really
Yeah.
hard because almost instantly I felt trapped for the first time in my life.
Yeah.
And it was also, you'll appreciate this, but it was also one of those situations where it was a problem that I had created,
Yeah.
and I felt like I couldn't or shouldn't complain about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
You got
here I
yourself here.
was in this, somewhat glamorous job
Yeah.
doing, things that a lot of people would say, "Oh my gosh, that's a dream job." But for me, almost instantly, it was the exact opposite. It took me away from all of the things that I had really gotten good at. I moved up through the ranks into training. And so,
Yeah.
I was training people and speaking and coaching and launching products. And it was really exciting. And then moving into this job wound up, it was just the reverse. So it really
Wow.
took me away from all my passions. And I can tell you, because I mean, I know you have these conversations and all of that. Prayer is a huge part of my life,
Absolutely.
and it was becoming a huge part of my life at that time. But I got to say, my prayers during that time, I was mad, like straight
Ooh.
up mad at God, because
Yeah.
I thought this job was just like, open door, open door, open door. And I didn't really understand. I was new in my prayer life at that time. So I just assumed open door meant God said yes.
That's right.
And I look back on it and go, I'm not sure if God actually said yes to this, or I just wanted him to
Mm.
say yes, and the door opened in this way. I ran right
Yeah.
through it and went in all in, right? And kind of doubled down on absolutely everything that I could have. And what's beautiful about God's grace and his love and his sense of humor is
Yes.
that bad fit job, whether God caused me to be in it or it was a total mistake,
Yeah.
either way, he redeemed it, because that wound up being a 2-year season where I got to ask myself, this isn't it. So
Yeah.
what do I want?
Yeah.
What am I here for?
Yeah.
Because honestly, like the pharmaceutical industry, depending on what you think about it,
Yeah.
they're doing a lot of good work and they're doing some bad stuff too, all that,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
But I know for a fact when I look back on it now, I was not meant to spend the rest of my days in the pharmaceutical industry.
That's
I
right.
was not created to do that. Now some people are. Some
Yeah.
people are absolutely created to innovate. Some people are absolutely created to lead in a corporate environment. Like that is absolutely what they were there for. But that wasn't me.
Yeah.
And honestly, I was having so much success in that industry that if I had not had that wake up call, I probably would have spent another 20 or 30 years in a job that was comfortable,
Yeah.
paid more than paid the bills, but was not what I was meant to be on the planet to do.
Isn't it
Yeah,
interesting how God can use seasons like that to kind of
100%.
slingshot you into the
100%.
place that you're really supposed to be? So something that seems like it's taking you backward is actually taking you forward and repositioning you.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And that's exactly how God did it. Now, again, whether God caused it or not, he redeemed it
Yeah. Yeah.
entirely. And so
Yeah.
what it was part of it, there was a season of kind of mourning. And that's
Yeah.
one of the things when I talk with people, whether I'm interviewing them for my podcast or I'm coaching, because I do a
Yeah.
lot of coaching where I'm, coaching executives and high achievers and entrepreneurs. I always say, like, when you have a season like that, you have to give yourself at least a hot minute to
Mm-hmm.
mourn what you thought it was going to be,
Yeah.
right? Because if you're like, oh
Mm-hmm.
no, I'm not disappointed, I'm not hurt, I'm not
Mm-hmm.
frustrated, like if you
Yeah.
just look away from those emotions or you try to bury those emotions become zombie emotions.
Yeah.
And if you've ever watched The Walking Dead,
Yep.
zombies always show up at the worst
Yeah.
possible time. Same thing with zombie emotions. Like if you don't address the disappointment, the frustration, the
Yeah.
fear, like if you don't, and you and I both know one of the best ways to do that is take that to God,
That's
right? But
right.
also you got to work through it. And so I needed a little bit of time to work through it, because we were in a situation where I couldn't just quit my job,
Yeah.
this bad fit job. So I needed to continue to deliver. I needed to continue to bring excellence. I needed to continue to follow through on my commitments. And I did that. I
Yeah.
absolutely delivered. I still, hit all my goals, did all the things.
Come on.
But I decided in that moment, and you asked me kind of like, what do you do in that moment? I decided in that season, not initially, after I gave myself a little bit of time, I decided, you know what? I need to learn something new. I don't
Yes.
think I know what I need to know to go into the next season. So, I started to think about what that might be and where do I need to grow on my skills. And I
Yeah.
talk with people about this all the time. There was a part of me that's like, logically, what makes sense? What
Yes.
do I need? What kind of night classes do I need to take? Do I need to have an MBA? All those things? I tried to deal with it for logic. And then I started to move more over into curiosity. Like, where am I naturally curious? What are the things? What are kind of the signs of what should I be paying attention to? And I can tell you, one night I came home from my bad fit job, and I married up, man.
Yeah.
My wife
Yeah.
is amazing. And I came home and it had been a particularly hard day.
Yeah.
And I was talking with my wife and she brought out this magazine. I think it was a Business Week magazine. And she said, "Hey, I want you to look at this article." And I looked at the article, and it was an article on a successful entrepreneur. And I'm like, and I think he was like in the airline industry or something. I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't get it. Like, I
Not
I
for
got
me, eh?
no interest. Miss, right?
Not
Swinging a
for
miss.
me.
Thank you. And she goes, "No, not that article. Look at the sidebar article." And the sidebar article was about this particular successful entrepreneur's coach. She's like, "That's what you do. Read the
Wow.
article. Read what this coach did for that entrepreneur." She's
Wow.
like, "That's what you do for people. You
Come
help
on.
people get clear. You help people like figure out what's getting in the way."
Come
Like,
on.
she's like, "Figure out how to do that."
Come on.
And I was like, "You know what? You're right." I didn't even know like life coaching, success coaching was a thing. Like, I didn't grow up, doing a lot of personal development, all that stuff. I didn't
Thank
even know
God
that
for
was a job.
amazing wives.
Percent. I absolutely God's greatest gift is my
Yeah.
salvation, and a close second is my
Come on.
wife. There is no doubt. And so I started to then pursue that to say, all right, what's
Yeah.
best in class? How do I pursue this training? What does that look like? And so I went and invested a lot of money and a lot of time in some coach training.
Yeah.
I did it on the side. I didn't just quit my job, all those things. And then I started to work on doing coaching on the side.
Yeah.
And my big name coaching organization that I invested in, they did a really nice job helping me be a more effective coach. They did a terrible job
Ah.
of like nothing on the business side of it. So I was
Yes.
left to just figure it out myself and just flounder and make every mistake known to man. And in fact,
Yeah.
I told God, I was like, "Lord, if I figure this out, I promise you I will turn around and help other people do this, because like this is
Come on.
terrible."
Come on.
And within minutes, within months of that prayer, things started to click, and I was able to leave that bad fit job. I thought it was going to be 5 years before I could do it, and God's infinite grace and wisdom and a lot of hard work and figuring out what we now call the six-figure sequence,
Yes.
I was able to leave that bad fit job in about 5 months, and we haven't looked back. We started our business full time in 2002, and we've been doing it ever since. And then what's wild about that is, and again, God's perfect timing. In 2006, everything was clicking, and some other coaches came to me and they said, "Hey, how are you doing what you do?"
Yeah.
And that reminded me of that prayer. Like, oh, I did promise I would do something. I would help other people. Yeah. And so I just decided to, for a weekend, meet with these coaches and a couple of other coaches and just teach them what I was doing. And that just took off. And we started doing more and more of those trainings. Then we took that training online in 2011. And we've been able to help thousands of coaches since then, which is crazy. That's amazing. So I know now that one of my core identities that God has given me is to be an encourager of
Come on.
encouragers.
Come on.
And I just realized that when I am an encourager of encouragers, when I focus on that and function from that identity, I have limitless energy. But when I start to try to compete with somebody else or get distracted by what somebody else is doing or
Exactly.
any of those things, that's when I start to get exhausted, when I start to feel fear, when I start to feel overwhelmed, when I start to feel less than, all that stuff. So I have to just come back to just be an encourager of encouragers, and you're
Come
good to
on.
go.
Come on. I love how, I guess, what I'm hearing too is along the journey, you kind of had a sense of what worked for you and what didn't work for you in terms of how you're designed.
Yeah.
And
Well, I
uh,
had to figure that out as I went.
well,
Like I
figuring it
would,
out,
it's that thing of like I would love to say it probably from hindsight or 30,000 foot, like, oh yeah, he totally knew what he was doing. I'm like,
yeah,
nope.
yeah,
In the weeds of it, it's
yeah,
a day-to-day experiment. And
yeah,
I'm a big believer in the scientific method. I really believe in saying, hey, when you look at scientific method, I was a solid B minus C plus, student period, but
yeah.
especially in the sciences. But I love the scientific method because the scientific method, when you look at it, there's beauty in it. If a scientist puts on their white lab coat and says, "Hey, I
That's
want to
right.
prove or disprove something," their first step is to create a hypothesis, which
Yes.
when you look at hypothesis in the dictionary, the definition of hypothesis is a well-informed guess.
Hmm. I love
And
that.
what's beautiful about that is that's really the best description for a plan, right? A best guess, a well-informed guess at how something's going to go, right? And then if you're a scientist and you keep that scientific mindset, then the only thing to do is to start experimenting to
Yeah,
figure out, is your hypothesis true or not? And then if you keep the scientific mindset, then if it doesn't go the way you thought, if your hypothesis proves to not be true, that's not failure, that's learning,
that's right. Fail
right?
fast.
Exactly right. So then it's a matter of, kind of that last step is to evaluate and adjust and say, all right, what do we want to try next? And so that's definitely been the mindset of my life. Is I very rarely have it all figured out before I start. I never have it all figured out before I start. It's that I think this is how it's going to go.
Yeah,
So let's try this. And then let's try this. And
yeah.
then let's try this.
Keep
And
tweaking it.
God, yep. God sustains me. And sometimes those seasons have been highly profitable. Sometimes those seasons have been not, and you still have to figure out how to do it, that kind of stuff. So it's wild, but it's good and it's rich. And I'm wildly grateful for this life. Yeah.
How would you say you help others navigate the tension between their dreams and their reality, especially when they're facing those setbacks or obstacles? Because,
Yeah.
you've experienced that in your own life. How do you help others to do that?
100%. So I think that tension, how do you deal with the tension? I love the question because in some ways, the first step to dealing with that tension is just naming it,
Yeah,
right? Because what's interesting about tension, whether it's what will people think, or I did this and it didn't work,
yeah,
or I invested in this and that didn't go the way that I thought,
yeah.
right? That causes tension. And what's
You get
interesting about
frozen.
tension, yeah, right. What's interesting about tension and the experience of tension in our bodies is our brain is amazing. Like God's design is incredible. But in our brain, there's about a walnut-sized section of our brain called the amygdala, and
Yeah,
it's really your brain and your body's bodyguard. Like it's constantly scanning for dangers
yeah.
to see, hey, do I need to keep, my human out of danger, right? And it's
That's right.
really good at identifying danger. It's really terrible at identifying whether that danger is real or imagined, right? So when we start to experience tension, whether it's the reality of I tried this and it didn't work, or the imagination of I could try this and my friends might not be impressed.
Exactly.
People might make fun of me. Your amygdala weighs those out equally, right? The imagination or the reality, your amygdala is like, still feel the tension. Tension's bad. Let's get you out
Yeah,
of there, right? And and so I always say, first, if you start to feel that tension, your amygdala is going to be like, get out, right?
come
Like
on.
tension, bad, get out.
Come on.
But I always say tension is simply a light on your dashboard,
Yes.
right? I just got a new to me Ford truck and I love it. And it is wired for sound. I mean, the old dash seems like it's just electronic and
Come on.
there's everything on there. So like there's more indicator lights than I've ever seen in my life, right? But, you know, like what's funny is we have two boys and they're both in their 20s. We haven't had a baby seat in a vehicle for 2 decades, right? But one of the things that's funny about my Ford truck is if I put something in the back seat
You can't
and
push
then I
back
get
that
in and I
seat.
get out, this big thing comes on, and I'm sure it's because of the lawyers at Ford that
Yeah,
say, check your back seat for a
yeah.
baby. And it actually puts like a car seat thing on this big dashboard the size of a
Oh,
huge iPad, saying, like,
yeah.
check the baby, right?
Come on.
There's no baby back there. There hasn't been a baby back there for 20 years, right? But I, you know, I get why that indicator light comes on. Same thing though. Like a lot of the time when we feel that tension,
Yeah,
it's imagined, it's not real.
yeah,
So I look at that baby seat indicators like check the baby, you know, check the back seat, make sure you're not leaving anything. I'm like, not a big deal, right? Same thing now. Like sometimes I will feel tension. Like I might try something, or I might even put out a social media post, and
yeah,
I'm not sure how it's going to be received,
yeah,
right? There's a part of my amygdala. It's like, check the baby, right?
yeah.
It's like, hey, people might not like you. Take it down or
Take it
don't
down.
do it, all that. And it's like, I just go, hey, amygdala, thanks so much for watching out for
Let
me.
it go.
I
Let it go.
appreciate you, but I'm not actually in danger. There is no bear, there is no lion, there is no tiger
That's right.
crouching. And even if some people don't like it, guess what? That's actually a good thing because the people that do like it will like it more because there were people who didn't like it. So have at it, right? Like, but I can't. Again, it's like we were talking about earlier with the zombie emotions. Like you
Yeah,
can't ignore the tension. You have to identify it because sometimes the light on the indicator or the dash indicator light
yeah,
is accurate. Maybe, the other day I was working with one of my coaching clients and she talked about, hey, I felt, an indicator light went on. There was risk, financial risk to a decision she was making. And she's
yeah.
like, I looked at that and realized, hey, it's not entirely true, but there are a couple of truths to it. So I need to at least pay attention to it. So she double checked in her sense,
Yeah,
in her case, she double checked, something on her credit card to make sure that,
yeah,
everything was good and all that kind of stuff. Right. So it's that I'm not saying dismiss all the indicator lights, but to be able to identify it and realize that tension is absolutely one of the indicator lights that comes on
yeah.
and just say, all right, is there any truth in that tension? If there is, pay attention to it. Take a small step to address it. If it's not, thank your amygdala, thank
Yeah.
God, and then keep moving, right?
That's right.
But to say, hey, I will say now, oftentimes, especially with people who are pursuing their big dreams, I always say, hey, now look forward to the tension because
Yeah.
oftentimes that is an actual indicator, not
That
that
you're
you're in
heading.
danger, but that
Yeah.
you're doing something important.
The right direction. Come on. So then
Yep.
what would you say to a guy who feels stuck maybe in his personal or professional life and wanting or hoping for a breakthrough and not quite seeing that? Because the tension is there, you're feeling stuck, and
Yep.
it's that
Yeah.
internal you're almost clammed up and everything around you is kind of
Yep.
off. You're stuck.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one of the things we go back to the scientific method is oftentimes I always say, hey, what's the experiment you can run today?
Mm,
Right now, for me, one of the things when I was in that bad fit job, I just wanted out of that bad fit job.
yeah. Yeah.
But I didn't want to just quit my day job and just, hang out on the couch. We couldn't do
Yeah.
that. Right.
Yeah.
And I don't think I ever, like, I don't know about you, but I don't ever really want to retire.
Yeah.
We might remodel, but I won't
Come
retire,
on.
that kind of thing. But so, so in that season, the outcome that I thought I really wanted was a fully functioning, 6-figure coaching and speaking business.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about that though is you don't get that. And I know it sounds trite, but you don't get that kind of thing overnight for a
Yeah.
number of reasons. Like, honestly, if I had gotten that overnight, that would have been a huge problem because I wasn't ready for it.
That's right.
right? As you know, like growing and sustaining a six-figure business is very different than starting a six-figure business.
Absolutely.
And part of starting, you know, six and seven-figure business is it's learning what you need to learn as you need to learn it. Like you don't have to learn everything. You're learning the part. So it's I always say, what's the part I need to learn today? What's the
Mm,
experiment I need to run today? Right? Who could
mm,
I be learning from today? What's that one small thing, that small but significant thing that I could be doing today? And figure that out. Don't try to figure out the whole thing and don't try to leap, you know, to where you're not quite ready yet, but say, hey, what's that thing today? And I interviewed a guy on Dream Think Do. His name was Sean Askinosi, and he was a really really successful trial attorney, like
yeah.
unbeatable
Yeah.
trial attorney. And in his 50s, he realized that he was losing his passion for law, which is a really dangerous thing when you're a
Yeah.
trial attorney
Yeah.
and you're kind of unbeatable.
Exactly.
When you're starting to lose the fire,
You
you know.
gotta
And he
get up.
said he nobody else knew it, but he did,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
know that, like with high achievers, the people that listen to your podcast, you know,
Yeah.
it could very well be like, and everybody in when I was in that bad fit job, nobody knew that I wasn't loving the job. I was still performing, right? But Sean, what's beautiful about Sean is he didn't just quit law. What he did was he started to give himself permission to just run some experiments because he didn't love, he was starting to lose the passion for law,
Yeah.
but he
Yeah.
didn't have something else to fill that yet. And so that was really scary for him. You know, a lot of times high achievers, we're so focused on something that when
You
that starts to
gotta
get removed, it's horrifying, right?
come
And so he
on.
started taking cooking classes
Yeah.
just as something to like, well, I don't know, but I'll just try it. And
That's
what's
it.
fun about Sean is he figured out he's not a good chef, not
Yeah.
a good chef at all.
Get out
But
of that quickly.
one of the nights of one of the classes, they focused on chocolate, and he figured out, ooh, I like chocolate and I like making chocolate, and according to this one night, I'm pretty good at it. And so he
Yeah.
started to experiment with chocolate and started to run, you know, try some different things, learn from some things, take some classes, all that kind of stuff. And then he started to like get into the chocolate industry. And one of the reasons why he was so successful in the courtroom is he had a high priority on justice. He knows
Mm.
that's one of the reasons he was
Come
put
on.
on the planet, was that to work through him for justice. And he started to realize there was all sorts of injustice in the chocolate industry. And he started to get passionate about that
Ooh.
too. So
Come
he and
on.
his daughter went to I think it was either Nicaragua or the Philippines,
Yeah.
and met with some coca farmers and
Whoa.
talked with them about their process and what it was
Whoa.
like and what it was like to work with the big names and the big industries. And he started to get more and more fired up. And so he came back and they started to make what they call a small batch chocolate.
Yes.
And you can look them up now, Askinosi Chocolate. They are one of the leading, if not the leading, small batch chocolate makers in Missouri, you know,
Gotta
in the
check that
US,
out.
in Missouri. Delicious. Like Oprah says it's one of her favorite chocolates ever, right?
Well, if Oprah says it's good, it's good.
That's exactly right. Come on. Which is absolutely amazing. Now, what I love about that is like Sean didn't one day go from being a successful trial attorney to then having a chocolate company that Oprah loved overnight. That would have
Yeah.
killed him. It would have
Yeah.
never happened, right?
Yeah.
That was years in the making. But now he is a full time small batch chocolate maker. He runs the business with his daughter. They have a thriving business in Missouri. They're shipping chocolate all over the world. They
Whoa.
have open books. They actually work with the farmers directly. They have open books. The farmers know what they're making. The farmers
Come
see
on.
their cut. It is unlike any other chocolate company in the world. And it was Sean giving himself permission to run these experiments over and over until he found the right. You know, it's funny. Like he had to run experiments to find the right ingredients for different types of chocolate, and he had to
Yeah.
run the same kind of experiments to find the right ingredients for his business.
For himself. Wow, that is fascinating, and absolutely, I'm gonna have to check that out. Mitch,
Yeah.
as we look into leadership, because I think you're a great leader. What are some of the values and strategies you use to kind of keep yourself grounded, especially when you're juggling different projects and priorities?
Yeah.
What would some of those look like?
Well, you know, I won't surprise you, but my day starts with time with God every day if I can't, I mean, it's funny to say time with God, because now I used to, when I first started really growing in my faith, I used to think, okay, I'm going to read the Bible for 15 minutes in the morning, and then I'm going to pray for 15 minutes. And then I'll say, okay, God, I'll see you tonight. Like, like leaving the
Yes.
house, and I
Yeah.
won't. And now I'm like, I'm praying all the time, like
He's with
literally
you. He's with
praying
you.
all the time. So, it's not like I want God to be in this little chunk of my life. It's like, nah,
Yeah.
I need him to be in everything that I do,
Yeah.
right? Everything that I do. So
Yeah.
that being said, so it starts with prayer and time in the Word and all of those things. And I ask God each day, like, what do I need to be paying attention to today? Now there
Yeah.
are certain things that I need to check every day, right?
Yeah.
There are certain things in my business, there are certain things with my team that I need to check every day. Like, God is not afraid of spreadsheets.
Yeah.
God is not
Yeah.
anti accounting, right? Like, those
Come
are
on.
some of my least favorite things, but God
Come
is
on.
not against accounting. God
Come on.
doesn't hate the IRS, all that stuff. Like, it's a necessary thing. So all that to be said, I do though involve him, because what's wild is that I believe he wants to be in the details. Like, I
Yes.
used to think, you'll appreciate this, and it's absolutely true. I used to think, as I was growing in my faith, that there was a line, right? Like, I knew God could work in the church, and I had seen God work in hospitals. I
Yeah.
had seen God work, we did some mission stuff and saw, God work in developing countries. But I kind of thought, and I never voiced it, but
Yeah.
I, like, at a subconscious level, I kind of thought that there was this line for business or the marketplace where God walked up to that line and went, "Oh, you're going over there? All right, I'll see you when you get back." And I realize now, like, there are marketplace miracle after marketplace miracle stories in the Bible. Like,
Yeah.
you think about, Peter and the fish and the boat. That's a marketplace miracle,
Come
right? Like,
on.
I mean,
Come
like,
on.
even feeding the 5,000,
Yeah.
that's a marketplace miracle. Like, if you walked in to a McDonald's and said, "I need to feed 5,000 people. How many, fillet of fishes do you have?" Right? If you needed to come up with enough fillet of fishes to feed 5,000 people, that's a marketplace thing, right?
That's
That's
right.
thousands of dollars,
That's
right?
right.
Even when you think about the water into wine story, like, if you really look at that from an entrepreneurial perspective, right?
Yes.
It said that they filled 5 containers full of water, which would have been anywhere from 30 to 60 gallons of
Crazy.
water, right?
Crazy.
And then the party planner later said that it was the best wine he'd ever tasted. This guy was a professional partier, and he said the wine from those vats was the best wine he'd ever had. So what would 5 times 60 gallons
Ooh,
of the best wine you've ever tasted cost?
let's get into the science of it.
Right? Exactly. That's a marketplace miracle. So when I started to realize that, I'm like, oh, wow, you've been in the marketplace since the beginning. That makes sense. So,
That's
and
right.
I will say all the time, like, I still need to show up. I need to bring excellence, but the best stories and the biggest breakthroughs always involve God. They always, either he caused them, or he opened a door, or, he made something happen that could not have happened had it not been God being involved in some way.
I really love how you phrase that and you pull those stories from the Bible, because I think a lot of people in the church do believe that there is a line as you enter into the marketplace. It's not often taught that you should influence the different spheres of society. And I'm not really sure when or where that ideology came, but I guess it's the separation between the sacred and the secular that is still somewhere there in the church. And one of the persons I really love who also highlighted it in a similar way was in this book, How People Grow by Henry Cloud and John Townsend,
Yeah,
where they talk
incredible.
about
Yeah.
how they started their business and a mentor, a Christian mentor, really sat with them and say, hey, let me teach you how to do the business side of this. And I was really so impacted by just hearing them voice that in their book, because a lot of times in Christian circles, you don't hear that kind of language highlighted and affirmed very often. And I think there's such a place for that to be spoken more of so we can see it in a holistic way. But as we try to help men navigate through their seasons of challenges, what would you say are some ways that they could adopt leadership principles and practices that could sort of help to strengthen their families, themselves, or even their communities, things like their marriages? What are some of
Yeah.
those leadership principles
Well,
or
isn't it wild?
practices you?
Like, I mean, when you dig into, I know you were a true student of this stuff, but it's so funny. We did a workshop at NASA, which is kind of fun to say, right?
Come on. Come on.
And I did the same session in the morning, I did one session in the morning, same session in the afternoon. They didn't have a space big enough for everybody to be in there, so I had to do it twice.
Yeah.
And the guy that introduced me for the afternoon session said, "Guys, you guys are going to love this because you're going to be able to use it with your teams, but you'll be able to take it home and use it with your teens, right? You use it with
Ooh.
your teenagers, use it with your family." And it
Come
was so
on.
funny because then he left and a hand shot up from the back of the room. I was like, "I'm not really doing questions yet, but
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, what do you got?" And he goes, "Hey, could we jump to that teenager stuff as soon
Right
as
away.
possible? Because I got some stuff going on, And I love that.
Yeah.
But here's the thing is, as you work to be a better leader, I'm hard pressed to think of the strategy if it helps you to be a better leader, like
Yeah.
truly a better leader, not a better authoritarian,
Yeah.
not a
Yeah.
better, intimidator of people.
Yeah.
Truly, if it helps you to be a better leader, there is a very good chance it's going to help you be a better spouse. It's going to help
Yeah.
you be a better parent, right?
Yeah.
And, it's funny because I did a workshop. It was a mentoring and leadership workshop, infusing more mentoring strategies
Mm-hmm.
into your leadership style. And one of the things is we dug into listening, right? Like
Yes.
really, really effective listening. And we talked about, specific strategies like eye contact and staying engaged and not being distracted. And one of the specific things we also talked about was not interrupting the person you're talking with.
Yeah.
And I admitted, like I believe in being transparent. And I said, when I first got married to my wife, Melissa, I used to think the way I could really show her that I knew her was to complete her sentences. Like to say, "Oh, I know what you're going to say," and then to say it. I
That's
used
right.
to think that would really show her how
Yeah.
much I knew her.
Yeah.
Apparently, and according to my wife, it was doing something else entirely, right? And I know now, like it just made sense, right? So what's funny about that is I did that workshop, and then with that organization, I came back a month later and did a follow-up, and that same group of leaders came in, and while I was getting set up, one of the leaders came up to me, and it was funny because I knew of this person. He was very successful. He had actually had what we call grumpy listening face during the first session. So he just looked mad at me and mad at the world, but apparently it's just his face, right? All of that. And he came up and he said, "Hey, can I talk to you for a second?"
Yeah.
And I knew this guy was very successful, but I
Yeah.
also knew he was not afraid to share his opinion. So I
Yeah.
was like, "Okay, yeah, of course, let's talk." And I thought,
Yep.
"Oh man, boys, what's he going to share with me? That maybe I need to fix some stuff or
Yeah.
do something different or whatever, especially based on his face,
Exactly.
all that stuff." And he's like, "Hey, yeah, I just need to talk to you for a second." I said, "Okay." And he said, "I just want to say thank you." And I was like,
Whoa.
"Oh, you're
Whoa.
welcome for what?" And he goes,
Yeah.
and he kind of looked around and he said it really quietly. He goes, "You saved my marriage."
Ooh.
And I said, what? What do you
Yeah.
mean?" And he said, "The stuff you shared last time was really powerful, but that listening stuff, I knew when you said the thing about the interrupting." He's like, I do that to my wife all the time." And he said, "That night I went home and I didn't ask her whether I did it." He said, "I just chose to apologize for doing it."
So
And
good.
he said his wife just broke down and started crying. And he goes, "We wound up having this great conversation." And he said, I will admit, in the conversation where I was apologizing for interrupting her, I still was tempted to interrupt her." I said, "I know, right?" It's like, it's still there. It's right
Down in
there,
the
right?
brain.
He said, so I had to catch myself even in that conversation.
Yeah.
He said, and I'm not perfect at it, but my
Yeah.
wife has noticed a change. And he said, I didn't realize how much I was hurting her with that behavior. And he said, it's opened up other conversations where we're really able to have it. We're able to have these great conversations. And he said, I didn't realize how much of it on the brink we were. He goes, that's just who I am. He's like, I'm just
Yeah.
always driving forward. He
Yeah.
said, but this helped me to realize I need to work hard to save my marriage. And he's like, I'm in that process. He said, but I didn't even know. I didn't even know that I needed to be fighting for my marriage in the way that I was. So I was like, wow, how about that for listening?
Come
Good
on.
job. And it's that thing of like, what was that? That was leadership strategies
Yeah.
applied at home authentically,
Yeah.
made him be a better spouse. And I know I need to tap into that toolbox all the time.
That's a powerful moment.
Yeah.
And especially again, as you say, when you're able to bring those principles into other areas of your life and
Right.
apply them.
Huge. Yeah. So I love it.
Mitch, I want to jump a little bit in mindset and overcoming fear. In your experience, what's one way you'd encourage people, or how would you help them align their dream with their purpose and faith?
Yeah. It's a great question. One of the things I would say is don't put too much pressure on the dream.
Mm-hmm.
I think some people think that that they can only have one dream.
Mm-hmm.
We do these events called Big Dream Gatherings, and
Yeah.
we get people in a room, they write some dreams down, put them on the walls, and then they try to help each other out to make them happen. And my suggestion is to put up at least 3 to 5
Yeah.
dreams. And when a lot of people come into the room, they don't know one, right? So I tell some stories to kind of give them some different examples and stuff like that. But I suggest writing down at least 3, if not 5 dreams. Some people, I mean, the record's 32. So that's awesome. But my suggestion is like if somebody thinks they only have one dream, they tend to put too much pressure on that one dream.
Yeah.
Right. But if you give yourself permission to have multiple dreams, and sometimes even the word dream has too much pressure on it. Some people are like, I don't know what my dreams are. And so I'll say, well, don't worry about using the word dream. Ask yourself, what are some things I want to experience? And people are like, wait, what? And so when you think about it, like when you think about a dream, and some people say, well, I dream of going to Tuscany. It's like, that's great. That's a great dream.
Yeah.
I said, but when somebody says they dream of going to Tuscany, what are they really saying? What are they hoping to experience? And then people think, whoa, it's probably like the fresh ocean air and the architecture of Tuscany, or the food and all that stuff. And so I said, well, they're wanting to experience those things. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's great. I said, well, what's beautiful about that is you can experience those things in a lot of different ways. And you can even experience a little taste of that in Iowa or in Kansas or in Oklahoma today, right? So I always say, in some ways, de-escalate some of the pressure you might be putting on that word dream. Think about what are some of those dreams, multiple dreams that you might have, right? And then talk with God about how some of those dreams may in fact line up with your purpose. Like one of my big audacious dreams is I want to help launch at least 1 million dreams in my lifetime.
Come on. Love it.
Now the irony of that is there's really no way for me to know how many dreams I've been a part of.
Yeah.
At the same time, if that is my dream and I continue to pursue that dream, I may fall vastly short of it, but more dreams will be launched because I'm pursuing that dream. So like part of me is that's a reason why like I love training up coaches. I love to equip them to be better coaches and better business people. So we train people on that. Like I love doing that because I'm an encourager of encouragers.
Come on.
But selfishly, that also I know that if somebody is being paid well to coach people on a number of things, some of those things might be dreams, and more dreams will be launched. And the better they get paid and the more they have that business, the more dreams they'll launch. Hey, we're just check, being able to go after it.
What do you do? What do you do if they're afraid to step into that though? Step into
if
that
they're afraid
dream
to
or
step
that
into.
purpose.
Yeah. Well, it's funny how it all goes back to scientific method, but I always say, hey, if you're afraid of stepping into it, say, well, what's a small step that
Yeah.
you could take? There's a lot of people that think when they think I'm afraid to step into the dream, oftentimes what they have equated this to is, it's a little bit like if Sean Askinosie said, someday I want to have a chocolate company,
Yeah.
right? And he said that dream when he was a full-time trial attorney and hadn't taken a single night class. He probably would have, if he thought that's what it would take, is that he would have to
Yeah.
completely quit the law
Yeah.
and figure out a way to raise capital and hire chefs and find a location, all that stuff. If all of that had to happen in order for him to fully launch that dream, it would have
It
never
wouldn't.
happened.
It wouldn't.
But as a trial attorney, did he make time to take a single night class? Yes, he did. From that night class, did he buy a book of recipes for chocolate? Yes,
Yeah.
he did. Did he experiment in the kitchen? Did he ask for, chocolate? I don't know what kind of tools you need to make chocolate, but did he make, did he ask for chocolate pans at Christmas, right?
Yeah.
Yes, he probably did, right? Did he take a trip with his daughter for a vacation where they met with some farmers? Yes, he did, right?
Yeah.
So it's that thing of if you're really too afraid to step into your dream, I say, well, let's just say, what's something that would take 15 minutes or less that you could do right now that would move you towards that dream?
Yeah.
Don't start the whole dream. There could be that indicator light is absolutely right. There are some people that come to us that want to launch a coaching business, right? And I had one person come to me and, we offer training and then I'll do a strategy call or one of our team will do a strategy call. And I had somebody come to us and they were like, hey, I want to do your training. I just quit my job and I want to launch a coaching business.
Yeah.
And I said to him, you're not going to like this question, but
Yeah.
I'm going to ask it. I said, can you go back and get your job back?
Yeah.
He's like, what? And I said, well, actually the best way to launch and build a coaching business is on the side of something that's actually making you money. Because when you are dependent on your coaching business initially, to put food on your table, that oftentimes can force you to make decisions that aren't good decisions.
Yeah.
So I said, if you can build this on the side, that's really ideal. And he was
So
like,
good.
right? So like there are some people that just want to leap because like me, I just wanted to get out of that bad fit job. I just knew I couldn't leave it. That would have been bad decision making, right? So if somebody's too afraid to like say, oh, I'm too afraid to go after that big dream, it's like, well, maybe you're too afraid of that big dream that's probably 3 years down the road, but what's something you could do for 15 minutes today? Because what's wild about it, I'm not much of a math guy, but I have done the math on this. Like people ask me all the time, I don't have time. I don't have time to go after my dreams. And I was like, well, if I could give you 40 hours to go after your dream, would you take it?
Yeah.
And most people are like, yes.
Absolutely.
Said, well, if you take 15 minutes a day, 5 days a week, not 7 days a week, got to give yourself a couple days off. 5 days a week, just 15 minutes. That's 15 minutes waiting in line. That's 15 minutes waiting for a meeting to start. That's 15 minutes waiting while somebody's scrolling through Netflix to figure out what you're going to watch, right?
Yep.
15 minutes is everywhere. 15 minutes a day, 5 days a week. That equates to 62 hours over a year.
I love it.
So I said, you may not have 40 hours this week to devote to that dream, but I'm guessing you might have 15 minutes today. And there's probably a pretty good chance you might have 15 minutes tomorrow. If, they say the average American scrolls is on social media for 3 to 4 hours a day, either as it fully or at the side.
Yeah.
Let's just take 15 minutes from that. I don't know about you. I could be on social media a little less, right?
Oh yeah.
15 minutes a day.
Likewise.
Yeah, right. 15 minutes a day. Just devoted to something over the course of a year. That's 62 hours, right?
Come on.
Think you might be able to get some stuff done in 62 hours? I think so.
Come on. Mitch, this is amazing. As we wrap up this time, are there any other practical tools you'd want to share with men as they go through different seasons in life, whether they're feeling stuck or going through a transition and just really want that encouragement to keep taking the next step and keep climbing? Any other
Oh,
tools that
yeah,
you
I
think
would
would
say
be good?
one last piece of advice, which is probably one of the best pieces of advice I've ever gotten. And it relates to, I know guys, we're awesome and we're flawed, right? And a lot of guys, I know me included,
Yeah.
I kind of thought that this entrepreneurial thing may or may not go the way that I thought, and it may be embarrassing. So there was a real temptation to try to do it alone.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I will say, with any big dream, especially entrepreneurism, but with any big dream, to not do it alone. To
Yeah.
do it with God's help, of course, and to pray, but to do it with other humans in your life, people that are encouraging you and people that you are encouraging. And I know when I bring that up, a lot of guys are like, but I don't have those friends. I got my high school friends, or I got friends from work, but I can't really go after stuff because that stuff would make them uncomfortable
Mm,
or they wouldn't understand it, that kind of stuff. So what's interesting is one of my mentors early on, because I'm an introvert too.
come on.
So I love people, but I'm an introvert. So, given the chance to walk into a room of 300 people, I'll say hard pass, right? But
Yeah.
God's infinite wisdom and humor, that's my day job,
Come
right?
on.
So I get to walk into rooms of strangers all the time, and that's my day job. But one of my mentors, I was talking with him about needing to meet new people and
Yeah.
to grow relationships, especially in relationships that would be good, solid people to know. And I'm like, I just don't know that many people and I don't seem to know how to meet people. And he said, buddy, so let me give you a piece of advice. He said, focus on being interested, not interesting.
Mm,
And I'm like, that sounds profound, but I don't know what you mean.
yeah.
And he said, he's like, I think you're walking into a room of strangers or people that you could potentially meet, and you are asking yourself, how can I be interesting to these people?
Yes.
And he said, as an introvert, that question freaks you out. And honestly, that kind of like, how can I be interesting kind of makes you a douchebag,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah.
He's like, but if you focus on being interested, like
Yeah.
authentically curious about people, he's like, I guarantee you it will make you the most interesting person in the room
Yeah.
and it will help you to meet amazing people and build
Wow.
incredible relationships.
Wow.
And so I took that wisdom and I try to apply it every day, focusing on being interested, not interesting, and it's paid off pretty good. So
Wow.
don't go alone. Don't go it
Yeah.
alone. And if your response to that is, yeah, but I don't know people that would encourage me in this, go and find some people to encourage. Be interested, not interesting, and you will find your people.
Man, I love those powerful mentors who God just bless us
Boom.
with to download those wisdom and
Yep,
just amazing
absolutely.
experiences. I'm writing the book,
Yeah,
Awaken the Hero Within.
I love it.
And I'm interested to know, what are your thoughts on the concept of awakening the hero in the context of leadership? How do you see that?
Yeah.
Because
What?
this is
Yeah.
a book that I really want to used to encourage men as they feel stuck in different phases,
Yeah.
whatever area of life it is in. How do you see that concept as it relates to leadership and any other area that could give
Yeah,
rise
I
to
love
men?
it. And so what I love the Bible, and I think the Bible, people are like, oh, it's 2,000 to 3,000 years old, like, but it's still as relevant today as the day it was written. And then there are so many stories in it that so apply today. And one of my favorite stories is the story of Joseph in Genesis. And what I love about Genesis, that story of Joseph, and it's, it got made into a musical, which is not really all that biblical, of, Joseph's Technicolor rain or dream coat or whatever, right?
Yeah,
So most people have heard the story of Joseph, they just don't know. But Joseph, basically, he was a little kid who had a dream, and that dream made him a little cocky, which ticked off his brothers, and his brothers sold him into slavery, which is pretty brutal, right? But the dream was that basically he would kind of run the country and that his brothers would bow down to him. He didn't handle that information well. His brothers got ticked off, sent him away, sold him into slavery. And he wound up having a set of experiences that wound up preparing him
yeah,
to run the country. He
yeah,
eventually became the second in charge of the largest nation of that time. Now, when he had that dream initially, he was not ready.
Yeah.
He had to have some experiences, some of which were really negative experiences that were thrust upon him because he was being a jerk.
That's right.
And some of those things were thrust upon him because he was just in a hard situation. He didn't make bad decisions. He was just in a hard situation. And in some cases, he chose to stay true to his values, and that put him in tough situations too. What I love about that story is a couple things. One is it said, and God was with him.
Yeah.
When he was sold into slavery, it said, and God was with him. When he was put into Potiphar's house, and God was with him. And when Potiphar put him in prison, and God was with him. And he was in prison, and God was with him. And he was taken in front of Pharaoh, and God was with him, right?
Come on.
God was with him the whole time. And all those experiences, some of which I believe God orchestrated and some of which I believe God redeemed, prepared him to be the leader that he always was meant to be.
Yeah.
Right? Some of his best decisions, some of his worst decisions all came together to help him to be the leader he was meant to be. So I always say, like, I think there are people that long to be a leader, a great leader, to truly be that hero,
Yeah.
right? But they don't feel equipped. And it's like, well, yep, but what can you do today?
That's right.
One, like Joseph, remember God is with you.
That's right.
And two, what's the thing today? Is it showing up for your spouse? Is it showing up for your kiddos? Is it actually showing up and doing an eyeballer with, a coworker? Even that coworker that annoys you, right? Or that neighbor. Is there something you can do today specifically? You may not be the great hero that everyone knows, but what's something heroic you can do today? You may not be the leader that is recognized, around your organization or around the country, but what's a leadership quality you can exhibit today, right? Do that.
So good.
Focus in on this moment, and that will allow you to build into the hero and the leader that you're meant to be.
Thank you so much, Mitt. This is just an honor and a pleasure to have this powerful conversation with you. Where can people find you if they need to get to you quickly?
Absolutely. I love it. The best place to start is just go to mitchmatthews.com.
Perfect.
And it's MITCHMATTHEWS. That's really where everything starts.
Awesome.
You can find out more about what we do and the different podcasts that I have and our coach training and all those things. That's probably the best place to start. And if people have a heart for coaching and they're listening to your podcast and they have a heart and are curious about prayer, we have a free tool that people can dive into. You can go to mitchmatthews.com/11 prayers. And it's 11 different prayers that I use daily, minute by minute, to help me build my business and our life and things like that. So that's a free resource.
I highly recommend you. So whoever is listening, you should go to mitchmatthews.com.
I appreciate
Mitch, it is such a pleasure. Thank you so much for this powerful conversation. I know so many guys out there will benefit from it. Have an amazing day.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate you. You bet.